Robert Christian Hansen was born to Edna and Christian Hansen in Estherville, Iowa in 1939. Hansen had a difficult childhood. Christian Hansen, a baker by trade, was a nasty and short-tempered father figure who exhibited little sympathy or fatherly advice to his son during his childhood. Hansen still looked up to his father and hoped to one day follow in his father's footsteps and become a baker. Robert suffered from a crippling stutter, the consequences of which he would bear for the rest of his life. His inability to easily communicate with his classmates caused him to become bashful and shy. Hansen distanced himself as much as he could to avoid human contact. He was physically thin, with acne scars on his face. He was constantly rejected by girls, which instilled in him a strong contempt for women. This hatred for women transformed him into a monster that no one could have predicted. Welcome back to another video. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Click the bell button to receive updates whenever we upload a new video. Let's get started. During his terrible youth and adolescence, Hansen found refuge in big game hunting. Hunting gave Hansen a sense of control he didn't have in other areas of his life. He was fascinated by guns and excited by the power he felt when stalking and killing a living being. Hansen completed high school and entered the U.S. Army Reserve, where he served for 1 year until being released. He then got a job at a police school as an assistant drill sergeant. Hansen married a younger woman in 1960. Hansen was only 21 at the time. Hansen was caught and sentenced to up to 3 years in jail in December 1960 for torching a Pocahontas County Board of Education school bus garage. He was diagnosed with many mental health disorders while in prison, including bipolar illness and schizophrenic episodes. His wife abandoned him while he was serving his term. Hansen served 20 months and was released in late 1962. The next year, he married Darla Henriksen. The couple eventually had 2 children. In 1967, Hansen and his family relocated from Iowa to Anchorage, Alaska. Hansen achieved his ambition of becoming a baker in Anchorage. Darla worked as a teacher while he managed his bakery. Hansen and his family had a wonderful life. Their business was thriving, and they were well liked in town. Customers and neighbors described Hansen as quiet and reserved, but pleasant. Nothing about him made them nervous or suspicious. Hansen spent his free time hunting when he wasn't working at the bakery. He had honed his skills through many years of practice and was highly regarded by other hunters. Over time, however, Hansen grew tired of game hunting. Although his life was going well, he harbored a deep contempt for women. Even after 14 years, he was haunted by the memories of the teenage girls who had disregarded and humiliated him in high school. He convinced himself that he needed vengeance. Women began disappearing from Anchorage in 1971. The majority of disappearances occurred on 4th Avenue, which was home to many unsavory taverns and strip clubs. Hansen's homicidal pursuits were first amateurish. He still hadn't thought out his game plan. He attempted to kidnap 18-year-old Susie Heppard at gunpoint in 1971 and was later charged with assault with a deadly weapon by a grand jury. Hansen received a 5-year prison sentence for assaulting Susie Heppard, but Hansen, a smart and manipulative man, only served 3 months of his sentence. Hansen was then arrested in 1976 for stealing a chainsaw from an Anchorage business. He was condemned to 5 years in prison yet again, but only served 16 months. Despite his criminal record, he was released due to his reputation as a nice citizen and the friendly neighborhood baker. Darla, his wife, relied on his income because she was unable to raise their 2 children solely on her teacher's salary. She had no notion that she was married to a monster at this time. Between 1978 and 1983, women were disappearing at an alarming rate from downtown Anchorage. While some people did return, the great majority did not. Hansen bought a Piper Super Club, or a small 2-person plane, and flew the woman from Merrill Field in Anchorage to his cabin in the Matanuska Valley's Nick River location. He would first take his victims to his home on Old Harbor Avenue on Anchorage's east side, where he kept his collection of weaponry, animal trophies, and souvenirs from victims stashed in the basement, which was off-limits to his family. The torment would then commence in this chamber. Hansen would bind his victims and rape them for several hours. He'd then force them into his plane with a gun and fly them out to the Nick River. Hansen's real fun began here, where he had the most power and influence over them. He'd let them go in the middle of nowhere, blindfolded and powerless. His horrible rush of pleasure came from their desperation and a flicker of hope that they could survive. Hansen would stalk the women in the bush with his Ruger Mini 14 and a knife as if they were sheep or caribou. This most likely went on for several hours until the victim was fatigued and realized that she wasn't going to make it out alive. He'd kill her and bury her body in a small grave on the Alaskan tundra. As a trophy, he would grab a piece of jewelry, a pocketbook, or a driver's license before leaving her there. He'd mark the location of the body with an X on his map before flying away. This continued until June 1983, when Hansen abducted the wrong girl. Unbeknownst to Hansen, the female he picked up on June 13, 1983, would put an end to his murder spree. Cindy Paulson, 17, was working on Anchorage's 4th Avenue that night when a man approached her and offered her $200 for her services. Cindy saw nothing scary about him and entered the car. As she closed the passenger door, the man wrapped handcuffs around her wrists and placed a gun to her head. He then drove to his Old Harbor Avenue home. When they arrived, he forced Cindy into the house and down to the basement with a revolver. He gagged, raped, and tortured Cindy for several hours, just as he had done to his other victims. When morning arrived, Hansen drove Cindy to Merrill Field, where his plane was waiting. The region was empty. Cindy sat on the backseat floor. Her hands were bound in front of her. Hansen stepped out of the car and went to prepare the plane, leaving Cindy inside. Cindy saw an opportunity to leave and took it since she felt she had nothing to lose. Hansen didn't realize she'd left until it was too late. Cindy had taken a cab to the Big Timber Motel, according to police. They found her in one of the rooms, crying and still handcuffed. They uncuffed her and took her to the police station, where she described the man who had abducted her. Cindy then took investigators to Merrill Field Airport, where she identified her kidnapper's plane. It belonged to Robert Hansen. Police went to Hansen's house to question him. Of course, he vehemently denied everything. Hansen had gotten away with it again, despite everything he'd done. His friends were once again eager to lie for him, claiming to have been with him when Cindy said she was abducted. The well-respected family man in Baker's statement carried more weight than that of an adolescent sex worker with no friends or influence. Women's naked bodies continued to show up in the area around Anchorage, the Kenai Peninsula, and the Knik River. Enter Alaska State Trooper Detective Glenn Floth. Since the discovery of victim Eklutna Annie, Detective Floth had been working on the cases of the missing Anchorage women and was certain that a serial killer was at large in Anchorage. Floth had a top suspect in mind, according to Cindy Paulson, Robert Hansen. Floth contacted the FBI, detailing his suspicions about a serial killer in Anchorage. The FBI's Investigative Support Unit responded to Floth with Special Agents John Douglas and Roy Hazelwood. Douglas urged Floth to provide details about the murders so that they might profile the perpetrator. When authorities questioned Hansen about the things discovered at his home, he could no longer deny his involvement. He admitted to murdering 17 women and disposing of their bodies in the Alaskan bush between 1971 and 1983. Hansen was sentenced to 461 years in jail. It is largely assumed that Robert Hansen killed more than 30 individuals. It's unclear how many women Hansen sexually assaulted but didn't kill. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Robert Hansen agreed to help authorities locate the remaining bodies on his death map. Unfortunately, 5 of the bodies have yet to be discovered, and Hansen took the knowledge of their whereabouts to his grave. Hansen passed away on August 21, 2014, at the age of 75. I do not doubt that his death was hailed by many Alaskans who lost their loved ones at the hands of this monster. Let us know what true crime story we should reveal next. We'll see you at the next one.